I don't know what you're expecting me to say at the beginning of this video. I genuinely don't. This Suicide Squad movie, it's definitely not good. In fact, it's trash. Suicide Squad is such a waste of space in this early portion of what was the DCEU. It just feels so odd that they made the choice of giving us 3 movies back to back to back where the world is basically ending. Why couldn't we just get a simpler movie, such as a Batman movie in this slot instead? Batman was literally in Suicide Squad, and all I kept thinking to myself was, why wasn't this a Batman movie instead? We were so much better off with them just giving us a Batman movie that starred a Harley Quinn and Joker duo that Batman had to fight against compared to this trash. Yeah, I know, this is gonna be a long video, and I have almost nothing good to say about this awful movie. As always, I'm your host, Justin, otherwise known as I Don't Beat Games, and I'm here to bring that DCEU content right to your monitors. A paper-thin story, a list of characters that most people won't care about, and one shining star is arguably the best way to describe Suicide Squad. I actually can't emphasize how bad this movie actually is. It isn't even on the level of a bad 90s movie that's so bad that you can actually laugh at it and have a good time. The entire story of Suicide Squad is basically that Amanda Waller needs to create a team of misfits to help save the world. She wants to use this task force to get things done that she thinks a regular army can't handle. Though, despite sounding interesting, the entire story falls apart as the movie keeps on going. Suicide Squad tries to tell that story while balancing every single other character's origin story and also trying to give Joker somewhat of a major role too, since you know Harley Quinn is in this movie. It's painfully obvious that they wanted Harley Quinn to be the star of this movie. Well, they succeeded, except it reminded me how much I disliked her character in this movie because of the fact that she's so much better after Birds of Prey. It was so difficult to go back in time essentially and see this older version of Harley Quinn even if she's exactly how you wanted her to be. This movie also spent so much time focusing on Harley that the rest of the cast kind of gets left behind. Don't get me wrong, I'm not all that interested in Killer Croc, Captain Boomerang, Deadshot, El Diablo, and Katana. However, in succeeding at making Harley the main focus of this squad, they failed horribly at making us care about the rest of the Suicide Squad. The plot behind each member of the Suicide Squad are so minimal or basic because they spent so much time making Harley's backstory the main focus. I can tell you everything that they've shown us or told us about Harley, but do these members have an equally detailed backstory? Yeah, not so much. An example, Deadshot's whole plot is that he's a hitman with a slightly soft side. They only use this soft side when it comes to manipulating him and getting him to do things when it's convenient for the plot. They use this whole mini plot regarding his daughter and her having him as an awful father to get him to do things. It's not something that's naturally there. The only time it seems natural is in the beginning of the movie where they approach each of these members and he talks about a list of demands before he joins the squad. Outside of that, it's like, oh, Deadshot doesn't want to do X. Yeah, well, remember that daughter of yours? What would she think, Deadshot? Then Deadshot just stands there and says nothing, only to eventually do what they say because it'll help advance the plot. It's just so painfully empty that I couldn't bring myself to actually care because it wasn't written well at all. Next up on these awfully written characters is Captain Boomerang. Captain Boomerang is a thief who just steals from places in Australia. The best part of his backstory? The Flash making a random appearance just cuz? It was like they were in the drawing board meeting for this movie and they were like, man, we showed Barry Allen for 2 seconds in Batman v Superman. Surely we need to bring him back in the next movie immediately to build up towards this Justice League movie. How do we do that? Then some dude was sitting down in the meeting not paying attention and said out loud, why not just shove him in somewhere random like Captain Boomerang's intro scene? And then of course, they went with that because they refused to find a way to make a Flash movie before Justice League. Also, Captain Boomerang has a pink unicorn fetish. Why? I don't know. They were probably like, why not? Just throw it in and we'll make a bit out of it because we need some comedic relief in this movie. That then brings us down to Killer Croc, Katana, and El Diablo. Don't worry, these backstories are all so minimal that we're about to do one hell of a speed run. Let's do this. Killer Croc was put into prison by Batman. He was treated like an animal, cause he looks like an animal, so he became an animal. I promise you, that is what they tell us word for word. That's it. Katana, all you need to know is that she lost her husband to some killers where she's from, and now she uses the sword as revenge. She also talks to the sword because she thinks it has his soul in it or something. Man, I don't know, I just remember that happening in the movie. That now brings us down to El Diablo, who does nothing for almost the entire movie. This dude has the ability to use fire and summon a fire demon. He killed his wife and kids because he doesn't know how to control his anger. They were probably like, let's make him a hothead, because that's what you call people when they can't control their anger. Plus, he has the ability to use fire. This would be clever. It wasn't. He spends literally most of this movie being on a self-righteous path trying to redeem his character, only for him to finally do something at the end of the movie. You know what's hilarious? They even try to make us care about him by producing the scene in slow motion. It didn't work at all. Now that I've managed to cover every single member of the Suicide Squad and their painfully paper-thin backstory, it's time we talk about the story of this awful movie. Firstly, we're gonna talk about this awful Joker. Then we'll touch on the Enchantress's story and her effect on this movie. Finally, we'll end off talking about why Amanda Waller's choice to make an underwhelming squad filled with villains was a bad decision, and why a Batman movie that properly leads to the Justice League makes way more sense. Alright, let's do this. I know logically, it makes sense that Joker should be established with Harley, especially for a cinematic universe. This Joker, however, was so damn bad. Joker's mannerisms in this movie simply didn't work for me. Seeing things like him laying around a bunch of weapons and knives, hearing his absolutely awful laugh at stupid club, and then on top of that, his tattoos, which from what we saw, all sucked. You mean to tell me that we couldn't have gotten something better than this? I don't care if Jared Leto swears that his Joker only looks awful because of the minimal footage they used. I care about what we have in front of us. I care about the final product. The final product of a Joker that was given to us just feels so half-assed, and like they wanted to go in this weird direction where he's sort of a pimp in a way, and it doesn't work for me at all. It also doesn't help that he appears in that awkward music video for Purple Lamborghini, which was made for the Suicide Squad movie, and it just feels like he's there to get the video clicks more than anything else. The overall feeling that I have with Jared Leto's Joker is that they thought it would grow into a huge phenomenon similar to Harley. The thing is, they failed horribly, and it didn't end up being anything close to that. So you know this Enchantress nonsense? Yeah, not a fan of this either. Originally, I was intrigued by the idea that June Moon stumbled into the wrong cave, which is what made the Enchantress take over her body. That was actually interesting and could have led to an actually interesting story. Hell, it gave me a bit of Tomb Raider gone wrong type of vibe. Then what they do is, they introduce this generic white dude soldier named Flag or whatever. He becomes her literal kryptonite. Flag makes her character worse and basically makes her become a damsel in distress. Instead of making Flag's entire story of trying to save her and be her eventual knight in shining armor, they could have made it clear that he has to take her down. They could have done something way more interesting, like June gains control and confidence in her powers. That could have led to her and Enchantress going somewhat of a bond, which leads to Enchantress manipulating her to become a villain that takes down Amanda Waller, who assembled this awful squad to begin with. Why not do something like that, rather than making the main villain a damsel in distress? That card has been played for absolutely ever in cinema, or whatever. It just feels like Enchantress could have been a much better villain overall, and her small origin story was legitimately interesting. Instead, they let not only me down, but most people who watched this movie were let down as well. By the way, the Enchantress has a brother too. All her brother does is be a CGI monster that destroys a big train station and helps her free from her heart. At least, I think that's what he does. The only reason that's important is because originally, Amanda Waller had control of the heart, and Enchantress was set free by accident, which is how we got here to begin with. Outside of that, her brother does nothing. It's even funnier when I realize that I don't even remember his name, and I don't care enough to remember his name. His character was seriously not that important. Yes, the writing in this movie is that bad. I promise you, I'm not lying at all. This now brings us to Amanda Waller and her bad ideas. The concept of this Suicide Squad being the heroes that the world needs sounds so poorly made, not only on paper, but on screen as well. It's not interesting. Arrow did it slightly better, and honestly, it just made me think that she could have just called Batman instead. Amanda clearly has a way to contact Batman. She even said Batman brought Killer Croc to prison. Why was this not a Batman movie instead? Think about it. Batman gets a movie immediately post Batman v Superman. This movie spends time giving him more growth as both a hero and person, but also establishes the DCEU as well. Then, towards the end of this hypothetical movie, Amanda calls Batman about Steppenwolf because his degree of being a threat has gotten worse since Batman v Superman. Towards the end of what could have been a much better hypothetical movie, we get a full scene that leads towards Batman being willing to form a team to help save the world. After that comes Wonder Woman and Aquaman's movie. You can keep giving Barry more detailed appearances since making a Flash movie has proven to be absolutely impossible for DC at the moment. Keep the movies the same, except Batman appears in post-credit scenes to assemble them or whatever. Boom! Justice League happens, and the only new character we're really being introduced to is Cyborg because he's clearly not interesting enough for a standalone movie. Does this not sound better than this damn Suicide Squad movie and sound like a better build-up to that Justice League movie? Trust me, I'm happy with the state of the DCU. I am more than happy that the rest of the movies will only get better besides maybe Justice League. Quite frankly, I don't even remember hating on Justice League, so I'm excited to see what the outcome of rewatching that movie will be. However, we're finally pushing forward and actually getting to watch a fantastic movie next, Wonder Woman. I can't tell you guys how excited I am to finally be done with Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and more importantly, this awful ass Suicide Squad movie. Originally, I wasn't even going to give any sort of closing thought for Suicide Squad because I felt like I was putting in more effort for this entire video than they did for that entire movie, but I'll be nice. Harley Quinn carried this movie on her back, and without her, no one would like anything about this movie at all. She literally single-handedly is the reason this movie is even slightly worth watching. Granted, her character is so much better in Birds of Prey, as I've stated earlier in the video. Also, Sucker for Pain still slaps, and I've been listening to it again after rewatching this movie, so maybe that's the only other positive thing about this awful movie? Anyway, the rest of this movie sucks, and what we've learned here is that it's even worse than I remember. I would never advise anyone to watch this movie because there's no value outside of Harley Quinn, and I'm sure you can find a highlight reel of Harley Quinn scenes from this movie on YouTube. Anyway, I'll be catching you all in the next video when we finally get to talk about my favorite DC movie, Wonder Woman. As always, I'm your host, Justin, otherwise known as I Don't Beat Games, and I'm here to bring that DCEU content right to your monitors. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you really enjoyed this video, hit that sub button. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, write a comment down below. Don't forget to keep it real with peace, love, and positivity.